Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. I know that there's a lot going on right now that can make us feel like we're teetering on the edge. Probably the first thing that comes to most of our minds is economic instability. All the back and forth going on with tariffs has caused the stock market charts to spaz out to the point that they look like a politician's polygraph test. Then there's also a very good chance that a lot of the things that we use every day are going to become more expensive. Another potential consequence to rising prices is that some distributors may decide that it isn't worth the effort anymore and just close up shop, and that could cause shortages of certain goods later on. And with all this tension within the global economy, that's eventually going to cause tension between different nations. And while it's pretty unlikely that we're going to go to war over Temu having to raise prices, nations could lash out at each other in other ways. We've already seen retaliatory tariff slap fights break out on several occasions, but it may not stop there. Cyber attacks are becoming more and more common, and they're capable of causing damage to a lot of different areas. They can be used to attack infrastructure like water treatment facilities, hospitals, and power plants. And cyber attacks could also be used to strike a nation's economy more directly. And in a worst case scenario, it could cripple like an entire financial system. And of course, there's always the threat of natural disasters. Tornadoes have already been causing big problems in the South, and as temperatures rise, wildfires are going to become more common. And to round things out, hurricane season will be starting soon also. But even with all these potential issues, there are still several things that you can do to be more prepared. So today, we're going to talk about 10 useful steps that everyone can take. And one of the most important things that any household can do is to develop a family emergency plan. That's especially important if you have kids, older family members, or anyone in your home that has special needs, because when something goes wrong, you want to have a clear idea of what to do before you're dealing with the chaos of being in the middle of it. So start by thinking through the threats that you're most likely to face. Natural disasters are the most obvious, but also consider man-made threats like chemical spills, power grid failures, and even civil unrest if you live in a major city. Then decide when your family would shelter in place versus when it make more sense to get out of town. That should be based on the type of disaster that you're dealing with and how much time that you'd realistically have to respond to it. You want to have clear red lines that everyone understands because hesitation wastes valuable time. Also, come up with 2 or 3 meeting locations, one near your home, one in a nearby town, and one further out if you need to leave your area entirely. That way, if phones go down, you still have some sort of plan. But that being said, try to have backup ways to communicate. Text messages may go through when calls won't, and it's also a good idea to pick an out-of-town contact that everyone can check in with if you're separated. Your plan should also have assigned roles for important tasks, like everyone should know who's grabbing the bug out bags, who's in charge of different documents, and most important, who's going to pick up small kids if you're not all together when disaster strikes. And with this, you don't want to overcomplicate stuff. You just want to have something that's clear, realistic, and that everyone in your family can understand. Now, a family emergency plan is only useful if everyone knows how to follow it, and the best way to make sure that that happens is to run drills. Practicing different parts of your plan ahead of time will help build muscle memory, and that can help prevent panic when something actually does go wrong. If you have kids, a good place to start with all this is simple fire drills. They're already doing those at school, so in addition to help prepare for an emergency at home, it also make the other drills that you do later on seem a little more normal. Then beyond that, practice bugging out. That includes loading your vehicles to know what you can take with you, what you can't, and now you're going to get everything to fit. Do the Tetris ahead of time. And at home, do shelter-in-place drills where you'll seal off a room and go without power for a day or so. If you plan on using radios, practice with them. My son's not even 6 yet, and one of his favorite things to do is to play with my radios. He's already figured out how to talk on them and also do other things like turn on the NOAA weather and FM radio features. And when you do all this, you're going to learn a lot, like how long it really takes to get out the door or how easy it is to forget something important when you're rushing out. Try to run these drills at least twice a year, and don't forget to go over what worked and what you need to fix after you're done with everything. Next thing everyone should be doing is just continuing to build their preps, because preparedness isn't something that you finish. There's always something that you can improve on, and once you got the basics lined out, then you should work on building depth and improving what you already have. So instead of spreading yourself too thin trying to add a bunch of extra like different things, focus on deepening your core preps like food, water, medical supplies, fuel, and hygiene stuff, because having something like a sawyer and a couple of cans of beans might technically check a couple of boxes, but they're not going to carry you very far in a real emergency. You're going to need more than that. It's also a good idea to build redundancy whenever possible, because if something breaks, gets lost, or just doesn't work like you thought it would, you need to have a backup plan. An example of this is how I handle off-grid cooking. I have ways to do that at home, I have ways to do it on the go, and I have stoves that use both natural and man-made materials, so everything's covered. Then use what you've learned from your drills. If you found yourself running out of water too fast or struggling with janky bargain bin gear, then it's time to upgrade. You also want to keep track of what you have. It doesn't have to be fancy. Even something like a notebook or spreadsheet will be probably a lot better than what most people have. That way you're just not buying duplicates or forgetting to rotate your food or fuel. And in addition to expanding your preps, it's also a good idea to take steps to disaster-proof your home. Now, I'm not talking about boarding up your windows and turning into some weird like mole person or anything like that, but there are some things that most of us can do to make our homes a little less vulnerable without having a huge impact on our day-to-day lives. Doors and windows are always a good place to start. You can reinforce entry points with quality deadbolts, extended strike plates, and window security film, and if you live in a hurricane-prone area, having storm shutters or pre-cut plywood can save you a lot of trouble when the doodle hits the poodle. Then also think about fire prevention. Keep brush and debris cleared away from your home, especially if you live out west or in a more rural area. And also make sure that you got working smoke detectors and at least one good fire extinguisher on every level. And with fire extinguishers, the bigger the better. The more stuff you have to throw at a fire, more likely you are to stop it. Another threat that people overlook is flooding. Check your roof, gutters, windows for leaks, and consider sump pumps or sandbags if you're in a low-lying area. And then also take care of other things in your house, like protecting pipes in winter, use surge protectors, and have a backup power source for things like your fridge or medical equipment. And then don't forget security. Things like motion lights, cameras, and even just trimming back shrubs can make a big difference. And then trimming trees can help reduce damage to your home during thunderstorms or other weather events that may have heavy winds. And even though we talk a lot about natural disasters and other types of major events, one of the things all of us are very likely to face at one time or another is a financial disaster. And because of this, one of the most important things that any of us can do is just get our financial lives in order. That's something my family and I are working on right now, especially when it comes to paying down debt. High interest debt like credit cards or personal loans can eat you alive over time. And during a crisis, it can make a bad situation even worse, because if you're held down by debt, you won't have a whole lot of flexibility if you need to make drastic changes to your spending or move money around. It's also a good idea to set aside some savings, even if it's just a little bit at a time, and make sure that some of that is in cash, because if the power's out or the banks go down for a few days, your debit card's not going to do you a whole lot of good. But also keep in mind that a lot of stores, they're going to close if they can't run electronic payment systems because people are helpless. So doing prepper basics like stockpiling food, fuel, and other supplies now will help you make sure that your family has what they need, and can also help you avoid rising prices later, or maybe not so later. Then developing some DIY skills like home repair, gardening, or vehicle maintenance can save you a ton of money in the long run. Another thing everyone should do is prepare for utility disruptions. The most obvious one is going to be power outages, but other utilities can be knocked out or have issues also. Those include water, natural gas, and even communications, like what we had a year or two ago. And because of this, everyone should have a plan B. If you're on a budget, you should still be able to pick up things like LED lanterns, flashlights, and solar-powered security lights. Then if you have a little more money to spend, some type of generator is definitely good to have. I know I talk about those a lot. Y'all probably wish I wouldn't. But for water, try to diversify it as much as possible. Have multiple ways to purify it, whether you're at home or on the go, along with plenty of water stored at your home. Ideally, that would be spread out between multiple portable water containers, along with other things like rain barrels. Then collapsible containers and emergency bathtub bladders can be used to drastically increase your water storage if you know something bad is headed your way. And then if cell phones or the internet go offline, having a hand crank emergency radio will allow you to get information from the outside, and two-way radios can help you stay in contact with family members, friends, or neighbors that are nearby. Another thing every prepper should do is expand their skills, because even though gear is great, we love gear. It'll only get you so far. Things can break, your supplies may run out, or something else may happen that would require you to, heaven forbid, improvise. And for this, start with basic hands-on stuff like learn how to do repairs around the house, fixing faucets, drywall, stuff like that, and also get familiar with off-grid cooking methods and learn how to purify water using like homemade filters and boiling. Then knowing how to garden or raise animals along with how to preserve food long term, those are good skills to have as well. Another big part of this is learning skills that are valuable enough to trade. Like medical knowledge is one of the best examples. Being able to clean and dress wounds, stop bleeding, or even just identify common illnesses can make you a huge asset. Carpentry is another one. If you can build, repair, or reinforce things, there's a good chance that someone's gonna need your help, and the more that people need you, the more likely they are to help you stay alive or just not take you out. But another skill that could save your life in a disaster is being able to identify alternative water sources. Inside of your home, your hot water heater can be a great resource. Most of those will hold between 30 and 80 gallons. Just be sure to shut off the main water supply before you drain it so that contaminated water doesn't find its way in. You can also drain water lines themselves, and in a pinch, you might even be able to use the water from your toilet tank, the back part, just as long as no cleaners or chemicals like those little chemical coin things have been added. Outside, rainwater catchment's one of the best long-term options. You can collect it in barrels, outdoor containers, or even kiddie pools if you're in a bind. The natural sources like creeks, ponds, and springs can also work, but it's important to note that all this water should be purified before you drink it. That's pretty obvious when it comes to natural sources or a rainwater catchment system. But it also includes water from inside of your home if you're under like a boil water notice or you're scavenging the last little bit of water from pipes that's been there for a while. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned that cyber attacks could become more common, and the best thing we can do to prepare for those is to take steps to harden our digital lives. Start by doing basic things like using strong, unique passwords for every account, and turn on two-factor authentication whenever possible. Next, be careful with what you post online. Avoid sharing your location, daily routines, or anything else that could tip people off to your preps or gear. And also go into your phone and app settings and turn off like any tracking or microphone camera access that doesn't need to be on. It's crazy. Some of the apps out there that try to get permission to use those things, like your cat calendar app, doesn't need to know your daily driving routine. Sorry, cat calendar app. But also make sure that your devices are secure, keep your software updated, use antivirus tools, and avoid public Wi-Fi whenever possible. Ugh. I always try to use my phone as a hotspot since it's usually more secure and I have supposedly more control over who is on that. Then it's also a good idea to encrypt certain files and back them up on an external drive. And finally, have paper backups. Keep hard copies of things like insurance info, account numbers, and emergency contacts, because if the internet poops the bed, you're going to be glad that you have those. But one of the hardest things for a lot of preppers to come to terms with is the fact that you can't do everything alone. That's one thing that I really struggle with, but the bottom line is that it doesn't matter how skilled you are or how much stuff you have, sooner or later you are going to need help. Maybe you or a loved one gets injured, or you just need help securing your home or property. And that's why it's important to build a small network of people you can rely on. Look for folks that have complementary skills like medical knowledge, mechanical experience, carpentry, or farming. You want to look at how reliable those people are, what their mindset is, and what they bring to the table. And just start small and use common sense. Watch how people respond to smaller emergencies like storms or power outages, because that's going to tell you a lot more about them than asking, "Are you into prepping?" And that's just kind of weird to do anyway. And it doesn't need to be a formal group either. Some of the best networks grow quietly through like churches, local clubs, or just shared interest. And whatever you do, protect your OPSEC. Don't overshare early on, even with people that you think you can trust. And of course, OPSEC and security are going to be major concerns in a disaster, especially one that's long-term. So if you want to see things that you can do to make your home more secure, then click here. Or if you want to see items that every prepper should be stockpiling during spring of 2025, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.